I am Andrea Grossman, the founder of Writer's Block, now in our 28th season. I thank you all for coming, for giving up your Jeopardy seat on your sofa, and for joining us tonight. Before I get to tonight's program, I want to thank my lovely friends here at the Abell for making this gorgeous room available tonight. The Abell is a membership organization built by and for women, serving the community in 1,000 different ways and enriching our cultural landscape for over 100 years. I urge you to join the Abell. Mayor Karen Bass seems to speak here all the time, as does Congressman Adam Schiff in his district. We sit tonight. Now for this evening. Jeopardy fans know Amy Schneider because she's got the answers to just about every question anyone could lob at her for weeks and weeks and weeks. But that's not her whole story, and to me, it's not even the most interesting part of her story. She thrived on national TV in front of millions of viewers for months as openly queer and transgender. That's an enormous win in and of itself. In her new book, In the Form of a Question, Amy, of course, talks about the enormous Jeopardy experience, but also so much more. I love how she weaves in the discussion of cartoons and drugs into Jeopardy stories, her issues with attention deficit disorder, and its impact on everything, and her relationship to astrology and tarot. It's just so fun, and I think we can use a bit of fun these days. Guy Branum knows fun, too. He's a comedian and a writer. And a producer. He's a writer and producer on Mel Brooks' show, History of the World Part 2. That would be enough for me. But he also writes on culture and politics for a slew of publications, such as Slate, the New York Times, Vulture, and others. And now he can add Writer's Block to the top of his list of accolades. So here's what's going to happen tonight. Guy and Amy will yak for a while about In the Form of a Question, and when they're done, you can ask questions. I'm so glad and delighted to introduce Amy Schneider and Guy Branum.
Hello, Amy Schneider.
Hello, Guy Branum.
Amy, we first met 12 years ago because I was friends with your then wife, and the two of you hosted a podcast about Downton Abbey, which leads me to my first and most important question. Have you seen both of the Downton Abbey movies, and did you think they were good?
Yes. I was surprised that that podcast was not in your little intro there, like it's one of your best credits. Yeah, I have seen both of them. The first one I really did not like, but I wasn't expecting to because I had seen the last 2 seasons of Downton Abbey, so I thought it'd be terrible. And then the second one I kind of liked, and I was like, oh, I was really taken aback.
In your book, you say that you don't have an intimacy setting between coworker and Elena Ferrante character. Which will you be using for this talk?
I mean, it's more on the coworker side. I don't know any of these people, I have to say.
Like, do you think we could drill down enough that we, get towards your soul and then suddenly, you're sharing everything with us by a beach in Italy?
I think that's definitely possible. I'm a emotional intimacy slut. Yeah.
But also that is shocking for somebody from Ohio, a German Catholic from Ohio. Was it hard as somebody who was raised in the Midwest in a sort of repressive German Catholic family to make a whole book about yourself?
Well, I think, what's shocking for a German Catholic from Ohio is to be trans.
Uh-huh.
So once I had done that, it was sort of it really kind of well, I can do anything now.
Yeah.
This was the one thing I wasn't supposed to do, and I'm doing it. Wearing a dress, oh my God. But, it's partly that and partly just the general experience. I always say that everybody should come out as something as an adult because it's an amazing experience and so liberating.
Well, the colloquial term for a trans person who hasn't come out yet is an egg. And you talk about the idea of coming out of your shell and Do you miss your shell ever?
I don't. I think that I thought of the shell as protection, and now I look back on it and I see that, like, well, yes, it was protection, but it was more confinement. It was more of a prison. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't miss it really at all.
And, like, over the course of the past 5 years, you've gone through many different sort of, like, shades of exposure, and we're now in a situation where you talk about it in the book so in such a lovely way of just anywhere you go, somebody might decide that they need to tell you a story about their dying father watching you on Jeopardy, or in some way expecting emotional intimacy out of you, and you have described yourself as an emotional intimacy slut right here. But is it draining? Is it scary?
I mean, it is a little bit, and it's funny, like, this book tour has reminded me that it is kind of draining, because, like, for the most part, I really do like it.
Yeah.
But it does, there is a certain artificiality about it. There is a certain, like, everybody that's coming up to me, I do have to meet them with the, kind of, like, interest in, they're not interested in how my day is going, really. Like, at least I don't want to have that conversation with them. I don't know. And so it's only when on this book tour, when I've had to do it like over and over and over again for days at a time, that I've realized that it does kind of tire me out. But it takes a lot to tire me out of it. I mostly really enjoy it.
How many wins before you stop being a regular person who got to be on a game show and you start becoming a public figure that we all own a little bit?
Yeah. Well, they tape 5 episodes a day, 2 days a week. And so I won. My first 3 games were the last games taped that week. I came back the next week, won all 5 on Monday, won all 5 on Tuesday, and that's when I knew that it was going to be, a reasonably big deal at least. Yeah.
I mean, was it exciting? Was it scary? Did you have space for the scary?
I mean, it was exciting. Like, the scary was kind of there in the back of my mind, but, like, the excitement and, the money and things like that were kind of, like, covering that up. And it was also, like, I'm grateful for the fact that my original run was before they had gotten back to having a studio audience.
Yeah.
So it was, like, nobody knew about it. Only the people that were there in that studio, all of whom had, like, NDAs. And so I was able to not think about the public reaction to it too much and just focus on playing and having fun.
Were you able to use your egg skills for the period of time when you knew you were a great big Jeopardy winner and no one was allowed to know?
I mean, not really. I told significantly more people than I was supposed to tell. But, I've all the skill I developed at, hiding my feelings and being closed off and unapproachable and things like that, like, I've kind of lost that.
Wonderful. I'm very pleased for that. I mean, the question I need to be asking you is, what does it feel like to have a book full of your thoughts and with many of your worst times and so many of your best times all encapsulated for people to have their own opinions about?
A great question. I'm sort of finding that out. I think that there is a certain kind of liberating feeling about it. It does feel like, that's kind of why I put all this stuff in there, because after my first run, and everybody just knows me from Jeopardy, which is such a, normal, heartwarming institution in our country, and just these little 10-second anecdotes that I worked really hard to make punchy as best I could. And then becoming famous is like, oh, that's the only thing people know about me.
Yeah.
And, I started getting worried. I was like, what if they find out I do coke a lot? Or something like that. And I was like, well, I'm just going to tell them. Yeah. Because then I don't have to worry about it coming out anymore. And I can say, I don't have to, since coming out, I hate feeling ashamed.
Yes.
And I do not want to. And so that was what this book was about, was saying all of who I am, I'm not ashamed of.
I mean, part of coming out is like acknowledging that people aren't roles, people aren't ideas, people are complex things, and there is something dangerous in accepting that, and there's also something really liberating to be able to say that like people can have complexity, people can have contradictions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's, a lesson that it took me a long time to learn just around other people that, and I sort of talk about it a little bit talking about Daria, but just that I don't really know anyone, which sounds like, I don't know, like nihilistic, but I don't mean it that way. But, people that are in my life, I try really hard not to write anybody off anymore because I know that their story makes sense to them. They're doing things for reasons that make sense to them. And understanding is possible with anyone. And I don't have to be the, snobbish, sarcastic dick that I was for a lot of my life.
You talk in the book about like a couple of women, like fictional female characters that were like meant a lot to you. Molly from the American Girls.
Yeah.
You have a brief reference to Ramona, and I just wanted to make you talk about that a little bit more. And you have an entire chapter about the great Daria Morgendorffer.
Yeah.
And what did those women, or what did they mean to you?
I've had crushes on a lot of fictional women in my time, or like, I don't know what you call a crush before you hit puberty, but whatever that is. Like Ramona, like the thing that always sticks with me is she's out, her mom is talking to some friend of hers, and Ramona doesn't feel like talking, she's feeling shy and she doesn't really say anything, and the friend says, "What's the matter, cat got your tongue?" And Ramona sticks her tongue out to indicate that no, the cat does not have her tongue, and she gets in trouble for sticking her tongue out. And the injustice of it. Like, as a little 8-year-old myself, I was like, that is what it's like. Somebody gets it.
I mean, she was exactly the kind of rule breaker that I was obsessed with. Like, the boys around me in 3rd grade were constantly violating rules. They were not fun, but like Ramona had spirit, and I wished I could be like her.
Yeah, no, and she was a rule breaker, but not like, she was still a good kid. She wasn't trying to, Yeah, she had that balance.
What about Molly?
Molly was great because she was winning World War II, while also being, in 3rd grade or whatever, however old she was. And, and also, and it's funny because this was well before I actually had an interest in theater, but, she wanted to be, I don't remember, Miss 4th of July or whatever it was, and like trying out for that and getting it, and that was so exciting to me. I was like, wow, she got the lead role. I never get the lead role. Despite, I was in 2nd grade, I wasn't like, there were no lead roles to be had, but like, I felt that.
I know you because of your ex-wife, Kelly. And for such a long period of time, like coming out of Ohio, you were the person next to the person who was making a scene, the person next to the person who was getting attention. And now that you are somebody who millions of people recognize and want to hear from, I just wanted to know what you learned from that experience of being the person next and also being around my accursed kind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's hard to say exactly, but I do think being around your accursed kind did like prepare me for this in a certain way. Just seeing the sort of hustle that you have to have, right? Like I got this great like jump into this industry, but once I decided I was going to quit my day job and, I don't know, be a person in the entertainment industry in some ill-defined way.
Yeah, but like that doesn't come necessarily from winning a lot of Jeopardy. Winning a lot of Jeopardy puts you in that position, and coming out and acknowledging the things that you want puts you in that position. And like when you came to that point with Jeopardy, were you just like, well, I get this chance, I'm gonna fucking take it?
Yeah, I mean, I was. I think that like, I don't know. I always thought I was like special and like something great should happen to me someday. And I think what's cool about it is, I'm 44. Like this happened at a point where I had gotten old enough to be like, okay, maybe nothing huge and exciting is ever going to happen to me in the way that I've always sort of imagined. And that's okay, that like I'm perfectly content with my life being a normal life that has like a normal sort of scale to it. And then had this happen, which was what I had always wanted, and I'm super grateful that it did, but I'm glad that I had gotten to, middle age enough to realize that it wasn't necessary for my life to be a success.
But one of the interesting ironies in your book is that you were this person who's saying, you don't need to look at me, and you were always involved in theater. That you were always somebody, like your relationship to the spotlight, what was your relationship to the spotlight when you were 25, and what is it now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, part of like, being married to Kelly, like being the person next to the person, was a way for me to like get some of that feel of the spotlight without being, exposed as I was afraid of being. And then theater, I've said for a long time, theater attracts two types of people who want to be seen and people who want to be hidden. And so you can be on stage and be seen and be like a big deal, or you can be on stage and be not yourself and express yourself in however is appropriate for that character, but it's not you. No, everybody's looking at the character that you're playing, and it's not you, and you don't have to feel responsible for it. And that's what it was with me. It was the way I could be, big at times if I wanted to, or emotional or whatever, without getting blamed for it. It was like, I can't help it. That's just what the script called for. I don't know what to say, yeah.
You became famous from a show that gives you answers and makes you ask the question. Mm-hmm. And you structured this book around questions. Why are questions more interesting to you?
I think that, don't get me wrong, it was partly just kind of a gimmick. But
look, when I opened the book, I was like, waka, waka, waka.
Right.
And then I read the book, and I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah. But I think that, asking questions is, incredibly important. I think that a lot of problems in the world and society are caused by people who have decided that they have the answers and that they don't need to learn anything more or reconsider anything. And I look at my life, and over and over and over again, I have been completely wrong about things, and I keep finding myself in places that I never expected to be in, and believing things that I never thought I would believe. And I think that my life has gotten better and better every time. And so, being the fact that for whatever reason, I have had an inclination to be willing to question myself and to reconsider the things I believe, it's why I'm here today, not just because of Jeopardy, but it's why I was prepared to take advantage of that, because I'm constantly trying to know myself. Yeah.
You start out the book with chapters that are sort of structured around the questions that you are most frequently asked. And you do a really lovely job of analyzing those questions and finding nuance in them. But I have to know, what is the question you always get asked that you hate the most?
One of them is various variations on, is Jeopardy rigged? And like, did I throw the last game? Or like, do you think that this was like fixed, or things like that? I'm surprised at how often people ask me that. Like, and I can promise, there are various serious laws about fixing a game show. They're not doing that.
But also, being America's first trans Karl Van Doren would also be very groundbreaking, Yeah. It seems like a weird question for people to ask, but do you think it is them wanting to poke at the idea that you were capable of doing it for 40 episodes?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just sort of like general conspiracy theory sort of like mindset. And and also, I mean, I don't know, people like generally when I say that, people don't seem to be doubting me when I say
Yeah.
no, it wasn't rigged. So, I don't know.
Do you think that there is something inherently queer about trivia?
I mean, it's kind of hard to argue that. I've been to some trivia conventions and it's not super queer there. Um, I do think that, you know, I do think that people who are queer do have that kind of questioning mindset. I look at myself and I found the rules around what I was and wasn't allowed to do as, a boy so baffling, and everybody seemed to think that I would just take them for granted and take them, that I should just know them without being told. And so that's part of why I was always like looking deep into everything all the time, because I never knew whether this was maybe one of those unwritten things. Like, is this something that's okay for me to do or not? Like, and so I was always like really analyzing things like that. And so I think there's that queer experience that does make you, more questioning, I think, about, sort of everything. Then does that take you down a trivia road? I don't know necessarily, but I do see that in my life.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just that I know those gay guys, but it feels that way. And then there's also the sense of like, maybe sometimes when you are trying to avoid asking one question of yourself, you spend a lot of time paying attention to all the other questions. Do you think that that was true of you?
I mean, I think so. I think it's, that was sort of, and this arc didn't come through as in the book as much as it did my original pitch, but myself was the last thing that I put my curiosity on. It was on, sports facts and geography and world capitals, and then it kind of moved on to like society and relationships and things like that. And finally after 30 some years I was like, wait, what's my deal? Because I was afraid of the answer. So yeah, I mean, there was definitely, I look back at my life and I see I was working so hard not to be introspective my whole life. Yeah.
Closet powers are amazing. When you are not doing like 1/5 of what a human being's life is, when you just don't have a sexuality or a social life, so much time to learn world capitals.
Yeah.
In the book, you talk about sort of various building blocks of who you are. Daria, for example. But one of my favorite chapters was you talking about being poly during your marriage, and it was like such a fascinating thing to read about you guys as like dumb 20-somethings in Ohio having the sense of self to like make that decision together. And I just wonder, like, were you at all trepidatious about writing about that? And also, how did that help you get to where we are right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was a little bit trepidatious about it. Like, it was definitely the thing that I feel like I am in the sort of smallest minority on of things I talked about in the book. Like, I think way more people use drugs than are poly, really. But it's something that really, really feels important to me.
To be fair, in the Bay Area, those numbers equal out.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I know. Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it too, is because, like, I've been living in Oakland for 15 years. I tell people that I'm poly, they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. I assumed. But I know that most places are not like that. But it feels very important to me. Not that people cannot be in a relationship that is monogamous, that works for them, that is healthy, and that's fine if that's what you choose. But this idea of monogamy being the thing that relationships are about, that they're the definition of a healthy relationship and all of that, I find really upsetting. And it feels so much like all the like sex shame that I was raised with. The idea that sex is this somehow like special magical thing that can destroy things or have these huge impacts, when it's just sex. It's just a way that people interact with each other.
Are you proud of yourself for taking that step at that point in life?
I mean, I am, actually, yeah.
I'm proud of you just because it led to so many things. It led to Oakland. It led to, being around showbiz and shoving yourself out of this Midwestern Catholic, like, male-defined life that was handed to you. It was, to me, really powerful. Like, we stigmatize poly relationships so frequently as being, like, silly or unstructured or whatever, and that it was one of the core tools that enabled you, in my reading of your book, to be able to get where you needed to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely was. To us, it was, we're poly because we are honest, we communicate with each other, and it comes out of that. That was the thing that felt weird to us about monogamy, was like, if you're going to lie to your partner that you are not attracted to other people and that you don't kind of want to hook up with them, like, that's how it started with us. We were not going to pretend that we didn't have fantasies about other people, and then it just kind of built from there. It was really important to us in that sense, and I had, from kind of like First Communion on, I had sort of been like, okay, the rules are all kind of like made up and bullshit, but I don't want to break them until I've got a clear advantage for doing so, because I don't want to break them for the sake of breaking them, but whenever the opportunity arises, I'm going to. I don't respect the rules. Like, I was a rule follower, but not a rule believer for most of my life.
So we kind of talked before about, like, at what point in time did you realize in your Jeopardy run that you were going to be a thing? But, like, at what point did you realize, I'm going to have to be a little bit of an ambassador? I'm not just doing this for Amy Schneider. I'm a little bit doing this for all of the T's in the LGBT. And does that make you trepidatious about talking about things like drugs or, like, stuff that will challenge the people who, the Midwesterners who saw you on Jeopardy were like, that nice lady knows the answers.
Yes. I mean, I think that, first of all, just going in, before I'd even taped an episode, I knew how much it had meant to me to see the handful of trans people that had been on Jeopardy before.
In your acknowledgments, the shout out to Meath, I really appreciated, like, saying, like, hey, other people put their hands in before I had to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I knew, if nothing else, that any other trans Jeopardy fans out there were going to be really, like, watching me closely, even if I was just there for one game. And then as it went on, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be, I'm going to be a famous trans person, and, like, that could be a problem. I've been on Twitter that could go terribly wrong. I was a little worried about that, and then that didn't really materialize. But certainly, I was conscious all the time when I was taping my episodes of Jeopardy that I wanted to represent us well. That I knew that because the Jeopardy audience, famously, the median age is deceased. So, like,
These are people who have only seen trans people in episodes of Night Court,
Right.
Like, you are challenging their notions of how things work.
Yeah.
But also, I have to imagine for a lot of these people, like, there was an element of stealth, of them not realizing that a human being answering questions on Jeopardy could be trans until they had already figured out that they liked you.
Right. No, I mean, I think that was definitely it. And I think that, I was raised with Night Court and, Jerry Springer and Silence of the Lambs and all these things. I get it. I had all the same terrible thoughts about what trans people were. But, what I learned from this, in the same way in my experience, when I first met some trans people after moving to the Bay Area, I was like, oh, there's nothing weird about this at all. They're just people that are living their lives. And so, the people that saw me, the vast majority of them had the same reaction, which was very gratifying. But then, then the question is, okay, so why did I write this book then? To, like, am I trying to turn them all against trans people? Is that what I'm doing here? But really what it was, like you say, that nice Jeopardy, that nice Amy that knows all the answers, I had this fear that that was then going to be used for them to be like, oh, I'm fine with trans people, I'm not hateful or anything like that, I like that nice Amy. Why can't you be like that nice Amy?
She's one of the good ones.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does get at, like, the interesting, like, tension in you in this book is that you became famous by giving unambiguous questions to answers, but then look so hard at the ambiguity of questions. And, like, is truth as ambiguous as authenticity? Is this something that we are always figuring out?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, I don't know, to me, and I think this is pretty widely shared, transitioning is just like an endless series of like kind of ambiguous questions, Like, why is it that it was so important to me that I get like my hairline changed when I transitioned, but not that important to me to sort of like work on my voice and get that changed? I don't know. Or like, why is it that I do believe that gender is a social construct and the gender binary is kind of bullshit and all this sort of thing, and yet also need the gender binary to exist so I can be in one side of it?
Yeah, I mean, when people are like, gender is a construct, it's like, yes, and it exists.
Yeah.
It's all around us every day. Can you give people, I mean, God knows you've done enough media by now. Can we get 60 seconds of your coming out party? Can we get the abbreviated version?
Yeah.
Because it's very possibly my favorite story from the book.
Yeah. So it was my birthday. It was my first birthday after the divorce, and I had kind of known for a few months at that point that I was definitely trans, and I was like dressing up every chance I got, but I hadn't told like anyone because it was so shameful, obviously. And then I was so tense about this party. Kelly had always been the person that was the social butterfly, and I was like, is anybody going to show up? Do I have any friends still? Like, all the usual fears. And then I was like, I was having all of that, and then I was like, okay, well, I better change out of this like outfit I'm wearing and into some boy clothes, obviously. And then I just could not do it. I just could not. Whoever was coming were like the closest friends I had, and so it was the most scary to expose myself to them, but also the most necessary. If it was going to be to anyone, it had to be these people. And so at the last minute, I just left everything on. It was like a denim skirt, I think, and this like top. It was all from Target. And they all come in, and I have not told them anything. They have no idea that I've been having these gender issues. I'm just there in like this like ladies' clothes being like, hi. And they're all like, hi. And just like nobody acknowledged it until finally my one friend, who was very new at the time but became one of my closest friends, I went down to the front of the building and to let her in, and she was like, oh, that's really cute. I like that skirt. And I was like, thank you. And like we went on up, and that was it. But she was the only person to acknowledge that something was going on there, and it was the first compliment I'd ever gotten for a skirt.
It's such a magical story because so many I understand so well this position of all of those other partygoers of like, I don't know what the right thing to say is, but also she makes it so clear that it's not that hard to figure out the right thing to say.
Yeah.
And it means so much. In your acknowledgments, you call Jess your trans mom even though she's not trans.
Yeah.
I need to know what that means.
Oh, well, I mean, a lot of trans people, or a lot of trans women, have a relationship with a particular, more, I don't know, established, more senior, I don't know what you say, trans woman that kind of guided them through the process of coming out.
Acculturation to queer communities is really hard. There aren't structures in our society for that, and so frequently people stigmatize or pathologize intergenerational relationships between queer people, and you fucking need these things because, like, some bitch who has been through the fight before can tell you a lot of things so you don't have to learn lessons. Mm-hmm. Sorry for getting in the way.
No, but you're entirely correct. And, she was that person for me, despite not actually being trans, but being in the queer community and knowing things and just being able to, encourage me when I needed it, reassure me when I needed it. Yeah. I mean, it was just really, that was whenever I was like feeling all stressed about the whole trans thing, that was who I was calling every time.
It is horrifying to feel adolescent when you are in your 20s or in your 30s. And like, I definitely remember that time when I was being a 13-year-old girl when I was in law school. And you go in so many directions. And the moments when I had a law professor who would just like established boundaries with me and was just like, because you don't have a fucking mom in the way that you would have if you were a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And it is so wonderful to have that person who won't take your bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and also when you're in your 30s and you say, I hate you, nobody understands me, I'm going to my room, like it just isn't accepted the same way. Yeah.
So frequently, cis people feel really entitled to knowledge about trans people and trans women particularly. And did you feel a sense of anxiety or danger in inviting people into your private life as much as this book represents?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I just am somebody that is kind of like, I've always been happy to answer those questions while, when possible, reminding people like, you shouldn't have, that's actually not any of your business, but I'm happy to answer it so you don't ask some other trans person.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, trans shit is fascinating. Like,
yeah.
It's so weird that trans people exist. I don't get it exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm sort of happy to talk about it. I think and so that was kind of my hope, is that this is putting all this stuff out there so that people don't have to ask random trans people in their lives to share information about their genitals or shit like that.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Like, I guess it's also possible that it's just going to make them think that, like, everyone else is as open with it as I am. So, well, maybe it backfired, but who knows?
The thing is you can't spend your entire life feeling like you have to be responsible for the whole game. Like, and it is something that necessarily comes from there being more people of a particular kind in the public eye. When you have a situation of, well, we've got Laverne Cox, and she's going to have to tell us what the entire experience is, and like, having a nerdy lady from Oakland show up who has a lot of answers to a lot of things helps people expand the way that they understand things and the way that they can learn things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, very directly relevantly, like, Laverne Cox went through that, like, and got asked some terribly invasive questions, specifically by Katie Couric, and then Katie Couric asked to interview me on Instagram, and I had been put in touch with GLAAD, and I reached out to them. I was like, I remember that being, and they were like, no, she learned from that. She totally like educated herself, and she gets it now. And because Laverne Cox went out there and took those hits, I didn't have to.
Letting people learn lessons is such an important part of society growing, but so frequently it feels like members of minority groups don't have that same luxury to, learn lessons, like to evolve in the public eye. And we talked about this upstairs a little bit, but like, I was so fascinated by the point in your transition where fame came to you. You had come out about 4 years beforehand, but 2 of those years had been the pandemic.
Yeah.
Did it feel weird, or did it feel right to be like, the world's gonna get to know this Amy?
More or less right. It felt like, going into it, it felt like it was a little too soon, and I was like, I'm not sure that I'm ready I'm not sure that I'm comfortable enough with myself for this. But as it turned out, it just sort of like pushed me through that. Like it sort of, I was like thrown in the deep end of having everybody see me, hear me, assess me, and having me watch myself on TV for 40 nights, and just have to it got me over a bunch of things about myself.
Did you have to push through the I hate hearing my voice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like the first like week or so, like I'd be watching it and I'd be like, but yeah, but then eventually
by week 3 you're like, she's got something.
I mean, yeah, it really was, and that was something I really did not I felt like I was hopeless about my voice because I could not see myself changing it, and I could not see myself being okay with it, and this made me be okay with it, and I'm so grateful for that.
I mean, on the subject of voice in larger terms, like, what is the path that you imagine for yourself? Like, do you think about, like, what is the Amy Schneider business? You know, what is, who do you want to be in, like, our public world?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it, and, I don't, like, have answers in the way that I wish I did. I think, like, I really wish I was, like, because everything just kind of, like, came at me.
Yeah.
And it was just people offering me opportunities, for a while. And now it's gotten to the point where, it's not that I don't have opportunities, but it's not just like people kind of like knocking at my door in the way that it was.
You talk about this awesome toaster that they gave you. I would like to learn more about it.
I mean, I really don't know much more than I put in the book. It was a toaster that came to our apartment. We don't know why. We don't know from where. We sort of believe that it was Japanese, but just because it was an appliance that like played little tunes whenever anything happened, which feels like a Japanese thing. Yeah, and you could select your toasting with pictures, like how dark do you want your toast. Like it wasn't like a number 1 through 5. You would scroll through and be like, ooh, that looks right, and you'd click it. It was great.
You guys are seeing directly inside celebrity now. This is as good as the Beckham documentary. Also, the Beckham documentary is very good.
Oh, okay.
Yes. All right, here is my final question. It feels like high achievement is always an opportunity for people to question the femininity of women generally, but very specifically trans women. And like, how has that played out in your life? Have you been self-conscious about, oh no, as a woman, I should not be the woman who is best at playing Jeopardy?
Yeah, like to an extent, it has. But I mean, it's not something that I've thought about that much because there's nothing I can do about it. I am the person that did this, and I'm, I don't know, and I'm a woman, and I'm pretty femme, and so like, whatever, it is what it is. And I do think that I am grateful that I lived a lot of my life as, the unmarked category of white man, and sort of learned some like, Lord give me the confidence of a mediocre white guy. Well, I was a mediocre white guy for a long time. And so I do have that confidence, and so I don't really worry about it that much.
Magnificent. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Schneider.
Thank you.
But what are your questions for Amy Schneider? We got to know.
So I actually have a Jeopardy question for
All right.
you. What were the areas that you felt weakest about in preparation, and how did you prepare to fill those holes?
I think that, like, sort of popular music in general, like country music in particular, just because I've never really listened to it. Celebrity relationships.
It's mostly songs about trucks. Country music is mostly songs about trucks.
Well, I also don't know much about trucks, so that's like an issue there.
You call yourself a lesbian.
I'm not that kind of lesbian.
You said you didn't know celebrity relationships very well. Do you and Genevieve have a celebrity couple name?
I don't know. Our Wi-Fi network is Amy Vive, so yeah.
I like that. It's
Yeah.
Amy Vive.
But yeah, and as to how I address them, like I don't know that I did a great job. I did, like, because I had like a year of knowing that I was going to be on the show because they kept rescheduling me. So I did start listening to the radio in the car, so I was like at least going to know what sort of the top 40 hits going on were. Although I couldn't keep like Ed Sheeran and the other guy straight. What was it? I don't know. Like, there was another guy who had songs at the same time. It was from One Direction, I think. I don't
Harry
know.
Styles?
Yeah, that's the one.
They're so different.
Oh, are they?
But like one of the paths that we have sort of trod for people who are extremely successful on one trivia show is to go be like the chasers on The Chase or to go be on other quiz shows. Do you have any other quiz shows that you are obsessed with or that you would love to be on?
Not really. Like Jeopardy's like just always been the one for me.
Are you telling me you don't watch Only Connect?
I don't.
Oh, it's a BBC Three show. It's so fucking hard. You have to get on top of this right now.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, there is a whole world of British quiz shows that I've always kind of been like, I need to get into, but
yes.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Who's out there? This lady?
Hi, Amy. Who is the second coolest Jeopardy master and why is it Matea?
I mean, it is Matea. I love them to death. And in particular, they came into that Jeopardy Masters like working hard to get over a little imposter syndrome. They're looking online. They know that everybody is not predicting them to do well there. And they came in and came one clue away from knocking out James Holzhauer. It was genuinely one of the most impressive things I've seen was the way they... yeah. It was really amazing, and they had been through a lot in their personal life, and I was awestruck by the performance they put on in that final. Yeah.
What were your mom and dad like? Were they rule setters, or did they chastise you much, or did they let you run free?
I mean, they weren't, on the one hand, they were about the rules. Like, my dad in particular, I say about my dad that he would turn right on red, but he felt like he was kind of getting away with something when he did. But at the same time, they weren't like disciplinarians particularly. Although me and my brother were also just kind of like rule followers, we were all kind of like vibing on like, okay, rules. We can all understand rules and communicate around that, and it's all right. I definitely look back and see my mom sort of enforcing a lot of like sort of Catholic rules that she was like, I don't know why this is the rule, but I guess it is. This sort of like embarrassed way when she'd be like, you can't do that. I don't know why, sorry. Yeah.
Hi. Would you tell us a little bit about your tattoo?
Oh, I would be happy to. So this is Princess Ozma of Oz. The person who wrote the book, The Wizard of Oz, wrote about 12 sequels to it, and I read them all as a kid. And I thought that everybody kind of knew that they existed, and then I got this tattoo, and they don't know that. But in all of those sequels, Ozma is the ruler of Oz. And her backstory is that she was the rightful heir to the throne, but was kidnapped by an evil sorceress as an infant, and enchanted to look like a boy, and raised as a boy until adolescence or whatever. And Glinda discovers it and undoes the enchantment, and she is revealed as the beautiful princess that she has always been. And I'd always said I was never going to get a tattoo because I was like, how could I make such a permanent thing? Like, who knows if I'm still going to want that later in my life? And then I transitioned. I was like, well, I just made a bunch of permanent changes in my body. I guess tattoos are okay too. And so that's what I got.
Since The Wizard of Oz came out, it has been such a touchstone for the queer community. It's while working on A League of Their Own, I didn't realize that truly 4 years after it came out, lesbians were referring to each other as friend of Dorothy to sort of identify each other. Do you have any gut sense of why these things are such queer touchstones? Do you think that there was a little bit of sugar in Elle Frank's tank?
I mean, yes. There's actually like an essay collection out there called Queer Oz that I recommend if you're interested in these things. But like it is like throughout his work. You know, one of his books that he wrote, there was a character in it named Chick who was one of the lead characters, and it had nothing to do with Oz. It was this completely separate thing. And then like at the end of the book, he points out that he had never revealed whether that character was male or female, and then just leaves it at that. It's like, was that character a boy or girl? I don't know. And the publishers were like, I don't know, I don't like that. And he was like, no, it's staying. And so what they wound up doing was, in their marketing for it, there was this whole thing like, is Chick a boy or a girl? Send in your answers, kids, and the best answer we're gonna send like $20 or whatever people sent in 1910. And that's just like crazy to me that was a thing that was going on, you know, at the time.
Well, one of the things that people love to do is behave as though trans people were invented at some point in time between 1970 and 2012. And as somebody who knows too much about history, is there a person in history whose queerness or transness or that possibility fascinates you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hans Christian Andersen was definitely trans, a trans woman. That like kind of like comes through in kind of clear ways.
I don't see it in The Little Mermaid. What on earth could your foundation be?
Right. And Louise May Alcott specifically said, I have a boy's soul in a girl's body, and things like that. Seems to have clearly been a trans man.
Joe March is a woman's woman. I am shocked.
The one that I think I have the least sort of scholarly backing me up on is Franz Kafka. But I really do think, you know, when I look at his... I did read a 3-volume biography of him. And his, you know, his romantic relationships, the way he related to sex, like so much of it resonated so much with me, you know, and maybe we just have something else in common, but I think that there was something going on there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Sorry, I have questions too. who else? You?
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
So first of all, it's an honor to meet you. I'm also trans, and I'm also trans feminine, so it's so exciting to be here.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, as a very visible trans person, is kind of like a token trans person for some people, and you know, people are talking about you in the comment section of YouTube videos and Reddit and all that. How do you just practice self-care knowing that a bunch of people on the internet are talking about you and all that?
I don't look at it, you know. That's basically what it is. I don't... You know, and there is a certain sense of like, I do kind of miss social media a little bit, but also not. But like, I'm not on it. Like, I'm providing the content, but other people are posting it for me, and they're telling me what to post, and they're dealing with the comments because, you know, it just doesn't do me any good to see anything. Glad told me at the beginning, don't look at anything, and I did my best not to, but sometimes I got tempted and I went out and I found things that people had said, and it would just like make me feel terrible, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so it's just, I just try not to see stuff like that, and I'm mostly successful. So I mean, that's really the main thing. Yeah.
Did Sony give GLAAD a heads up that?
Yeah. No. Yeah. They you know, after I lost my last episode, they like pulled me into this back room and they're like, okay. Somebody, like, it wasn't us, it should have been us, but somebody at Sony was like, you need to take care of her, and so, they connected me with GLAAD. We met before my episode started airing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really helpful.
And Guy, you said you had more questions too, so...
Oh, no, I have been asking my questions as they come into my mind. My capacity to respect other people is very low.
Hi, Amy. Hi. I'm a high school teacher, and I'm here with 2 of my high school teacher friends. And thank you. I just started listening to your book last night. It came in, and I was so excited. But I only got to chapter 2. I was trying to binge listen, but I'm a busy teacher. And I know there's a chapter about teachers in your book. So I'm wondering, what would you tell us as high school teachers to support the Amys that are sitting in our classroom right now?
You know, I think that like when people ask me how to support, you know, sort of trans people, particularly, like to me it's always just sort of straightforward. It's just like, listen to them and they'll tell you where they're at. I had a parent send me this message that was very sincere and well-meaning, and I don't have any ill will towards this person, but being like, well, it's like our son, like basically saying that they were really confident that their son was a trans woman, but that their son was like not wanting to change pronouns yet, but they did want to shop for clothes and this and that, and like asking me what to do, and I'm like, your son already told you what to do. They said these are the pronouns they want. They said they want to go out and shop for some girly clothes, and like that's it. You don't have to decide for them anything for them. And so like that's sort of my general answer for that thing. But I think there is a chapter about teachers, and sort of it was a realization that I had while writing that, how important teachers are in a kid's life, and how there's like 10 or 12 of them in that I still think about what they meant to me, and I've never told any of them. So like I'm glad I got the chance to write a book and tell them. But my message to teachers is there's so many people out there being like, oh, I love that teacher so much, and they're not telling you. And apologies on all of our behalf, but you're really making a difference.
I loved the diversity of the teachers who you talk about, because yes, there's 100% the like 8th grade guy who made everybody sit in a circle and talk about how they were feeling, but there's also 100% the drama field marshal who was like, I do not care about any of you, this is going to be a very good our town, and I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
What did she mean to you?
I mean,
she's the one I want to write a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, and rightly so. She's like, it would be good, but there was something about being treated as somebody that didn't need their hand to be held and didn't need to be told didn't need to be buttered up. It was just like, hey, we're doing this play. I want it to be the best possible play. You should too. And so I'm going to tell you what needs to happen for it to be the best possible show. And I'm not going to worry about how you feel about it. I'm not going to make it the best possible show for you. I'm making it the best possible show for the audience. Because like youth theater a lot of it is just sort of like glorified babysitting, and it's just really about like, letting the kids have fun and be creative. And that was my first experience of like theater as like a job, and that our responsibility was to the audience and not to us, and I appreciated that.
Did you, when you were on Jeopardy, once you were a little bit more comfortable with it, did you ever come to a level of comfort where you felt the bandwidth to add a bit of showpersonship to answering, or the whole time were you just buzzer speed, buzzer speed, buzzer speed?
I mean, it's sort of, I worked really hard to, clear everything out of my mind except focusing on the next question. At the same time, I was always aware that it was a show, and I was always aware that I was on stage. And so, it wasn't about showmanship exactly, but I was very much about keeping my buzzer under the podium so you couldn't see how frantically I was, so I looked more calm, like not showing my nerves, like things like that. And then also, we did have the little 10-second anecdote every time, and I'd been watching the show my whole life and hated the anecdotes. And I was like, God damn it, I'm going to do my best every time. I'm going to have a beginning, middle, and end, and it is going to be punchy, and it's, I really cared about that.
Wonderful. What did you do when you started running out of anecdotes?
They have somebody there whose whole job...
Did you ever consider just saying, Kelly and I fucked other people? Sometimes.
The thing is, they have to review it before, like, they'll review it in advance.
I'm sorry I interrupted with a joke, but they have somebody there who, like, produces you?
Yeah, and, like, helps you with it, and, he's very good at his job, and, but we were scraping the bottom of the barrel, and if I'd gone a little bit longer,
Any allergies?
Right, for sure. I was starting to think of things that I would make up if I had to, yeah.
I never want to believe that those are false. I need to believe in something in America.
Okay,
this person with the glasses.
Okay, we're going to take a question from this person with the glasses, and then the woman a few down.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Thank you for everything you've done. I think you've really made a huge impact on the entire community of Jeopardy watchers, and I wanted to know what you're doing next. What's your next writing? What are you going to be?
I also kind of want to know what I'm doing next to an extent. The one thing that's certain is that I'm working with an author to do a middle grade adaptation of this book. Not all of this book, but parts of this book. And I certainly would like to write another book after this. I've got a whole document of ideas for what might go into it. But I don't entirely know. It's been like 2 years of just like nonstop things, and I'm now getting into the end of this book tour, and I actually have some time to stop and think about what do I want to do next. So we'll find out.
On the subject of middle grade books, do you have a favorite piece of fiction or narrative work about trivia?
I don't. Nothing is coming to mind.
Have you ever read The View from Saturday?
No.
It's E.L. Konigsberg, the woman who wrote from the Exo Files of Mrs. Right. Which in its own way is about trivia. But it's about a trivia team. It's a little bit Slumdog Millionaire, but I think a little bit better. But there are, there are a couple of interesting things that try to deal with trivia in narrative work. Do you have a favorite narrative work about queer women or trans women?
I think, I don't know, one that was really important to me was a Super Late Bloomer, which is, it's really a collection of it was a trans woman's who was a cartoonist, did a daily kind of 3-panel comic strip as she was going through her transition about whatever was going on with her. And it's really, really kind of amazing. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, yeah.
Hi, Amy. Over here. Hi. Thank you. You're awesome. Mm-hmm. And you are known now for a lot of things. What's your favorite thing about you?
I think I'm pretty quick-witted. I think that I do good banter. I like that about myself, yeah. Which reminds me, I wanted to say that I'm really glad to be here tonight. I'm thankful for everyone, thankful to be at the E-Bell here, even though when I looked it up on Google Maps earlier this afternoon, and you know how it's got those little excerpts of reviews, the first excerpt that it showed was really bad smells at the Emmy event. So thankfully I haven't detected any really bad smells here, so that's great.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Anybody? Okay. You? Oh, yeah. The pressure is on.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for being here. I'm curious about, what's your relationship to queer eldership? Because I feel like especially as young people, and especially Gen Z, we're very out there, and all the kids on TikTok are queer, but we have this entire generation of queer humans who were wiped out that we don't have, and I'm sure that's a lot of pressure, and as a young person I can also see that being a burden, but would love to hear your thoughts.
I don't know. I think that I just for me, I look at, people that I've known that came out 15, 20 years ago as trans, and, people that I'm aware of that came out earlier, and I couldn't have done it. I'm so in awe of what they were willing to confront, compared to, I've basically had it easy. Really, I have not faced that much hardship in being a trans person.
Don't say that too much, because everybody, Slate loves to write an article about the death of the queer neighborhood and the death of the gay bar and all of that. Mm-hmm. And we are indebted, but also there's still work out.
Oh yeah. No, for sure. You're right. I shouldn't overstate that, but it is something where I am so grateful that the way was made easy for me, and therefore I feel myself as part of this chain that is I'm making it easier for the next people, and on and on and on. So that's sort of just when I think about those things, that's what I think about is I can't imagine myself doing what they did, but hopefully in 20 years, trans people are like, I can't believe you went through what you went through, and honor. You know.
And it's just so beautiful that you have taken this moment and you have turned it into this really, really wonderful, really, really readable book, because it is something that's going to go out there and it's going to be in libraries and it's going to be in people's homes, and queer people and trans people and everyone who needs this book, people with ADHD, people who love painting miniatures from the Napoleonic Wars, are all going to find shreds of themselves in it, and you should be astoundingly proud. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Schneider,
Thank you.
the author of In the Form of a Question.
And Guy, I mean, the best moderator.
Thanks so much. Now, let's go buy some books, okay? Let's move some books.